Hey everybody, welcome to Watches with Dennis. It's the Saturday live stream like I typically do, and we're going to be back to our usual discussion of new watch releases. Last week, mixed things up a little bit, had a little bit of fun, went ahead and did something a little more theoretical. Thought about doing that again, actually. I saw oh gosh, it was the YouTube version of the Fratello Talks podcast yesterday, and they had a discussion about watch prices, and I thought the topic was good and the direction they went with it was not. So, I mean, in the sense that it wasn't like it was the wrong direction or even that I disagreed necessarily with the sentiment, well, maybe that was a little bit of it, but rather in their exploration of the topic, it really just seemed to very quickly, I'll say deteriorate into explaining how there are people that money is no object. And so watch pricing at the high luxury end is irrelevant because it doesn't have to tie to the value of the product. The people that buy it don't care what the price is. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I don't get I don't know if that's supposed to be an excuse for pricing that doesn't make any sense, but it's that segment of society is so small. I wonder are all these like high end companies well, they were using the new Piaget Polo as their example, but go with that, go with Patek, go with Audemars Piguet, whatever you want to go with. Are they really just like living off of really, really, really rich people that don't care about prices at all? Or, I mean, maybe they are. I don't know that there are that many that buy that many watches. I question it, but I don't understand the point of the discussion if all we're going to do is say, well, rich people be rich. I mean, that's fine. Maybe not talk about that price segment. Maybe talk at a lower end of the price segment and make it more interesting. But anyway, I already planned this topic, so I didn't want to change it up. But maybe we'll do that one sometime. Maybe that's a good panel one to talk about pricing just in general, because they got about 30 minutes out of it. I'm sure I could get an hour if I had 3 people. But anyway, so in terms of recent videos, I wasn't going to have anything. And then last night for me, I did actually turn out a first reaction video to the new Baltic Prismic line of watches. Don't have a link here in this video description, but it is the most recent video. So if you're watching this live, you can check that out afterwards. And we just kind of go over that. That's very Chopard-esque in terms of some of the dial approach. In some ways more whimsical or more fun than you might normally think for a dress watch. You'll probably decide that immediately based off the color, but great deal of texturing and material mix-ups. Is a grade 5 titanium and stainless steel, both in the casework. Very strange decisions. I think overall pretty attractive looking watch, but also on the higher end for Baltic, they're around €1,000. And I think they have 1 or 2 watch lines that are kind of near or a little bit above that price, but most of their stuff is significantly lower. So anyway, just an interesting sort of example. But today we actually have a number of new releases that are now not going to be Baltic, because I talked about Baltic in that. So we're going to be talking about Chopard today. We're going to talk about a couple different Omega releases that have gotten a small amount of attention. I won't say much. And then I also want to talk about Citizen, which had some expansion on their Siyosa line. So we've got some fun stuff to go ahead and talk about. But before we do that, let me catch up with chat. As usual, Kevin is the first one to type in chat. I think Kevin types before I go live. I think that's his secret. So good morning, Kevin. Hope things are going well for you. Good morning, Neff. And also thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Excuse me. I was recording this morning that for my Eclectic Gamers podcast. I finally someone. This is an aside. I'll explain my cough in a moment. Let me go ahead and do this question first. So Neff asks or says or both. The gold Omega is stunning. Is that a gold meteorite dial? I'm guessing you're judging this from my thumbnail. Way better than the recent Piaget. Good morning, by the way. So yes, good morning. Yes, it is a gold meteorite dial, and yes, we will dive into that one in more detail. We'll hit the Chopard first, but we'll hit those meteorite constellations next. Good morning, Tuna, and thank you for being a 99-cent club member. And Neff notes that he could get an hour out of talking just about the iGenure pricing. Well, that was a 2023 talking point of joy that that I had my fun with. Hey, we'll probably see some new. I think we'll see a new iteration of the iGenure, like some new dial colors or something here at Watches and Wonders here in a couple months. But we'll see if I'm wrong. T-Looks, welcome to Livestream. Any rumors about new Bulova releases? Not that I have heard, but maybe some people in the chat have heard differently. So, coughing. What? All right. So I made a few changes. One thing is, now that I do not work from home anymore, I got rid of my desk lamp setup that I used for work, because this is my computer desk where I'd work at. And actually I have now had more space behind the desk. So I've got my lights that I use for actual, like when I do proper recording. So I had space now. So now I should be reasonably well lit. So I shouldn't be so grainy. And the reason I also did that was, as longtime viewers know, I host a couple of podcasts where I do a lot of pinball stuff. But one of the podcasts, Eclectic Gamers podcast, the other co-host, Tony, he's been on this channel several times because he collects watches, is they also do video games. And someone got me the Lord of the Rings Golem game that was terribly reviewed for Christmas. So I finally finished playing it, and I have 14 hours of footage, and I'm condensing it into like a 16-minute review. So I've been working on that all morning. I've recorded my part. I have my capture card data. So I'm going in and I'm finding the relevant clips to kind of throw in as B-roll footage, if you will. So it's kind of like doing a watch thing, except I have to remember this terrible game that I had to play and remember what parts I want to pull from. And obviously, I normally work with just a few minutes of watch footage. I don't have to sort through hours of it. So but I'm trying to do it before I forget where everything is chapter by chapter. So if I'm coughing, it's because I've been talking all morning. But we do not stop doing this live stream just because of a little tickle in the back of the throat. So we will get to the Omega, but I want to go ahead and start with Chopard because I love the 1860, or the new version of the 1860. So the 1860 has been around for quite a while, and one of the change-ups that they did recently, and it was my favorite watch release of 2023, or at least of Watches and Wonders, and that was their new Lucent Steel one with the salmon dial, the guilloche, no date. That's the thing I don't like about the more historic 1860s. They're actually, even with the date, it's a relatively attractive watch, but I feel free, they're available for days on Chrono 24. But basically, if you see this image here, there's a rectangular date window that cuts into the small seconds on most of the traditional models. So they've gotten rid of the date in the new one, and I think the dial also looks a lot more interesting with the guilloche approach. Now, as you can see from this image, and link in the video description to this Hypebeast article on this, is you'll see that it's not salmon. This one is gold. So it's still Lucent Steel case. This is a limited edition run with a collaboration with Revolution. I don't know anything about Revolution. All I know is somewhere I saw this watch, and then it wasn't on any of my usual watch media, so I don't usually cite Hypebeast, but they had a good photo of it. So I wanted to go ahead and mention that. So I believe spec-wise, this is entirely the same as the salmon dial. You've got the Lucent Steel case. You've got the 36.5 millimeters in diameter. You've got the no date. You've got the LUC 96.40L caliber movement with the Geneva seal powering it. The price even is about the same. $25,200 US is very similar, if not identical. I'm not sure that's identical. That's around, what is that, like $1,000 more? I wanted to think that the salmon dial ones were MSRP'd around $24,000. So this isn't much different for it being a 50 unit run. But the big change up is obviously this dial. The dial is not salmon. The dial is 18 karat gold, yellow gold. Do I like it more than the salmon? I like them about the same. Is kind of my reaction. I really think this dial looks well. I think, given the calfskin strap and the Lucent Steel, it's a good contrast. But the salmon dial is a good contrast too. So I like them about the same. This sort of honey look, this reminds me when I saw the color scheme of the dial when Ming did their collaboration with Messina Lab in the 1709. They did a limited run with a sort of honeycomb pattern. And I ended up actually with a black one. Unfortunately, the watch with the crown was not comfortable to wear, so I let it go. But the even more limited version, because there were like 150 of those, and the even more limited version was with a honey colored dial. And I really liked the honey colored dial, but unfortunately, I was not offered the opportunity to buy that one because they had already sold them. So anyway, all of this, very, very good. I love the dial work on this. I actually have been looking at older Chopard watches quite a bit because of last year seeing this 1860 revamp. And Chopard actually has some stuff outside the 1860 line that I think is really, really interesting. Also, if you're willing to go with slightly older, I won't even say vintage, just slightly older on the Chopard line, if you're into dress watches, definitely check it out. They're one of those brands that doesn't retain value well. And so you can find like 18 karat gold cased watches that are maybe more in the Calatrava vein and such, under 10,000 for days. So they're playing, like if you want a gold watch and you don't want to spend 5 figures, look at used Chopard. There's a lot of choice out there. In all sorts of colorations, like, rose gold, white gold, yellow gold. They've done all of it. So anyway, just as an FYI. Now, most of those don't have this movement. Most of them are not Geneva sealed. And that's just something that's been relatively more recent, but that's not unique to this new 1860 either. You can find slightly older and different models that have the new movement. But the old movement, I believe, is pretty respected as well. It's just, again, if you're into Geneva, Geneva seal isn't very common anymore. Like Patek abandoned it because they wanted to use silicon escapements. I don't know why there's resistance to the silicon escapement. Maybe I should watch Art Sai more. I know that the host there does not care for silicon. I don't know why though. There's a reason. Like he must have a reason he doesn't like silicon in watches, but I don't care personally. I like interesting movements, but I don't need it to be that interesting, or maybe that historic would be my language. But anyway, overall, I think it's another winner. Obviously, a very safe play. I think I had projected for Watches and Wonders, and I still wonder about this. And this reminds me of that. I think Chopard releases another version of the 1860 at Watches and Wonders. I still lean towards not just a different dial color, but not lucent steel. The 1860 was historically a precious metal watch. They're charging a precious metal price for lucent steel, but there's no reason they couldn't go ahead and around the same pricing, go ahead and start offering the watch in gold. And maybe those become the more common one, and the lucent steel one becomes the more unobtainium. Because while the salmon dial 1860 is not a limited edition, their production run per year is very limited, is my understanding. It's a very small run. But that's the issue. And so I should have said silicon hairspring is more specifically, not the, I think I said escapement, but which maybe would imply the escape wheel, which is still metal, I think, in most, if not all, of these watches. All right, catching up with the chat is Koji. Welcome to the live stream, Koji, and thank you for being a 99% club member. Says, we once know the no date presses. Yes, I think that's how he said it. So yes, I had someone once tell me I had a 5 out of 10 Gollum impression, and I told them that I do the book version, so I think it was 10 out of 10, and I shouldn't be compared to Andy Serkis because I'm not doing the movie version. Tuna says, that is a very attractive looking watch. Neff says, I like the new 1860, but the salmon is, in my opinion, the most attractive watch ever. So while this is nice, it is not the salmon. Oh, okay. That same year, last year, they also had a salmon-colored dial for the Alpine Eagle they came out with, which is also a very interesting Alpine Eagle. I think maybe they got rid of the date there as well. And that one's very, very nice. I've not really seen it around on people. I've actually seen more from the 1860 Lucent Salmon than the Alpine Eagle, but I do like the 1860 more than the Alpine Eagle. The Alpine Eagle is an interesting watch, though. I don't know if I've never been able to try one on, so I don't know if it would wear well for me or not. But again, you can find them pretty approachable used in gray. Not the salmon ones yet, at least last I looked, but otherwise, pretty reasonable. Tuna says Chopard is always a great sleeper brand. Yeah, it's one of those where maybe it's because now in Chopard's case, I believe they started as a watchmaker and then pivoted into being and now are better known as a jeweler. over the quartz crisis, but they were historically a watch brand. They were not a jewelry brand that got into watches. They were a watch brand that got into jewelry. And the, I suppose, irony is they are now better known for the jewelry than they are for the watches. Neff, in regards to watch art size, saying he doesn't like silicone because it can't be adjusted by a watchmaker. The hairspring, I mean. Okay, I could see the reason for that. And Koji says, yes, it's just the hairspring being silicone that I object to as well. Scotty Pinball wants me to please do Nordman. Maybe later in the episode. But I've been talking so much today because of the Gollum review that I worked on. I don't know I can do the Nordman voice. Nordman is basically, he's a pinball designer, and I do an impression because I didn't know what he sounded like. For it's all a long whole story, but long story short, basically I do the Christopher Nolan Batman, swear to me, but saying pinball lines and design philosophies that I think Dennis Nordman, the designer, would embrace, or at least a caricature of what he would embrace. Neff says Bill Sanders loathes silicone, loathes it. Wow, loathing that's really potent. I mean, you just drop in a New Balance, right? And we'll be okay, right? It's silicone. We can make it. We have the technology. That's the exciting part. But hey, we all have our own things that we love and we hate about watches. So I like that he takes a stand. While we are at it, I should just write and ask Bill. Bill Sanders is the Watch Art Sci host. I know, and one other thing he doesn't, that I don't know why. Why does he hate 4 hertz? Right? He's always talking about how he wants watches 3 hertz and less. So I've seen multiple videos where he just goes, well, it's 4 hertz. And I know he'll take a watch that's 4 hertz, but it's like he complains about it every time. So there must be something about the 4 hertz that annoys him. And again, it's so funny to me because so many people, especially people getting into the hobby, they love the higher hertz rate because the seconds hand is much smoother on those watches. So I always thought it was interesting to see him lean against that. But anyway, something to noodle over a little bit. And while y'all are noodling, let's go ahead and jump to the second set. And this is the one that there was lots of excitement at the start of the episode. And by the start, I mean Neff was the one person who was excited, and that was to talk about meteorite dials and Omega. So here you go. This article is through Monochrome. Again, video description has a link, so you can check that out. And apparently these are obviously they're Constellation watches. If you're not familiar, the bezels are a dead giveaway. But Manhattan inspired. Now, I don't know what meteorite and Manhattan has to do with anything. I suppose maybe the case is Manhattan inspired, and the dial is obviously meteorite with the full integrated bracelet look. Because, guys, the integrated bracelet craze, it's not over yet. It can't be. Nothing is over. We cannot have freedom. We will not have peace. We will not have peace until some point when we will have peace. But we do not have peace yet. Do you know how we can have peace? By smashing that like button there. I'm trying to work that in now. So there, that will bring, peace where, it'll bring peace to the meteorite dials. I can feel it. I feel it in my silicon escape balance bones. I feel it. So let's do it. All right, moving on. So Constellation, pretty storied watch. I've looked at a few of these in the past. Every one of them that has ever really resonated with me just has not been enough for me to want to pay the price that they command. And I don't know. This might be the least popular line. That's tough to say with Omega. Obviously, Speedmaster and Seamaster are their most popular lines. My understanding is the DeVille line does very well in a lot of Asian markets. I don't know. Obviously, the Constellation does well enough that they keep it as a major collection. But it's also one we don't seem to see updates to very much, or at least we don't talk about them very much. So anyway, these are fairly large watches. We'll go ahead and jump down to the specifications here, but they're actually more than just the one that I integrate, or even the two you saw up top, or the one that I integrated in the thumbnail. So Monochrome does have a good summary here towards the end, but we got a bunch of different types here. So there are 5 different ones. They're all 41 millimeters. And I think the last ones that went with this look were 39. So these are bigger now. And with integrated sports watches, they tend to wear big. All the ones like the PRX and stuff that I've looked into. My understanding is the Parmigiani Tonda PFs also wear big. So just be aware that those sort of things are, this might wear bigger than the traditional 41. I'm not sure. We'll see some hands-on reviews, I'm sure, at some point that will tell us. But you've got 2 gold versions and 3 steel versions. So there's the steel one with the black ceramic bezel, and it's got the silver meteorite dial. And then you've got the steel one with the green ceramic bezel and the green meteorite dial. And then there is one with a steel case and the bezel is titanium and it's got the blue meteorite dial. So those are your steel options. And then you've got the moonshine gold cased version and you've got the Sedna gold cased version. And those are going to have either the moonshine gold dial or the Sedna gold dial. And so they're going to be very, very gold. So in terms of pricing, these are, looks like they put them in both prices. So let's see, we're talking 10,300 euro for the blue one, 10,700 euro for the 2 steel ones with the ceramic bezels, the black and the green, and then 46,600 euro for the gold versions. So yeah, okay, cheaper than the Piaget Polo. This is a Rolex day date pricing, like 36 millimeter day date pricing. But let's see if we can cycle some images here. So here's the green one with the green ceramic bezel. This is the one with the black ceramic bezel. Zoom in a bit and get a look. I actually, well, I'm showing you these. I don't. Meteorite, I wanted to talk about these because it was interesting. We never talk about the constellation. At least I never do. I feel like I don't. So I wanted to talk about it with you all here and get your takes on these. I don't actually like meteorite dials very much. It's one of those where I've softened my stance, as I often with anything that's different. I soften my stance over time. I still don't love meteorite dials. I don't know. It's just the haphazardness of it. I would prefer the structure of a guilloche. But I think these look really well executed, and the meteorite works very well with these dials, perhaps more so than some other watches we've seen. Now, here's the most affordable one. This is the one with the titanium bezel instead of a ceramic bezel. I think this is my least favorite, though. I don't really care for how this titanium bezel looks. I think that it looks a little Invicta-ish to me, though this one might resonate with a lot of people, given that it's blue dial. But overall, this is my least favorite iteration of this. And of course, the gold ones were my favorite. So I forget which one is Sedna gold and which one is moonshine. So anyway, here's one of them. And then the more yellow one. I think the more yellow one is the I don't remember. I don't want to say. I'll be wrong. I feel like I'm just flipping a coin. I'm going to be wrong 50-50. But overall, yeah, I think these, as usual, you know, we've got our little coaxial powered movement here. But yeah, nice, very pricey. I was surprised that the steel ones were. No, we don't want to subscribe to your newsletter. I was surprised that the steel ones ended up being more. Okay, so the moonshine gold is the yellow one, and the Sedna is the more rose gold one. Okay, so the article did say, as you would expect. I probably should have reread it because I really just was looking for photos. But anyway, so yeah, overall, I do like them. I would probably go a completely different direction still if I was getting a constellation than the meteorite itself. But basically, I like them in reverse order of price, with the most expensive being the best and the cheapest one being the worst. But that's just my general take on that. So let me go ahead and catch up with the chat. Koji mentioning, oh, you've got another one before that. This is tying to us talking about Bill and his Watch Outside channel and my question about the beat rate. Koji says he likes a slower beat rate. He can see the balance wheel moving and it's less wear and tear on the movement. It is true about wear and tear, but honestly, is it really that much different? I could be wrong. And again, I haven't asked Bill. I wouldn't think that the wear differential is enough of a reason to go that direction, especially with modern lubricants. The idea of being able to better appreciate the balance moving, I could understand that. I hadn't really thought about it that way, mostly because I don't care to stare at the balance moving very long. It's interesting, and I still do that with my display case watches from time to time, but I don't just sit there and look at the balance moving a whole lot. I'm more interested in the finishing of the display movement. than I am the actual like just operational mechanism of it. And when I'm looking at a watch moving, I'm usually looking at like the pallet bouncing back and forth more than the balance itself. For whatever reason, the tick and the talk interests me more than just the oscillation of the wheel. But that's just me. So Tuna says he prefers lower hertz, says it is more reliable. Okay. I mean, you get more power reserve out of it, but in terms of consistency of timekeeping, if you're moving the watch around a lot, my understanding was accuracy wise superiority for higher beat rate. Now, maybe that does come at a cost of reliability for the movement itself. I'm not sure. Koji notes he does prefer the slower beat rate as well, given his background in pocket watches. I moved to being very much, I didn't want watches that were under 4 hertz to being indifferent to it. I don't care anymore. I don't even look at the beat rate anymore, other than as part of the stat listing. And when I see a slower beat rate, though, I do expect to see a power reserve improvement. I would not want and I don't even know there is one, like a 3 hertz movement with a 38-hour power reserve. It's like, come on, if you're slowing it up, and this is usually on the lower cost end, then give me something for it. And what I want is power, especially if it's a hand wind. Let me see. Neff says, funny, Bill has or had a Daniel Roth with a 5 hertz El Primero movement, but yes, Koji is correct. That is why. Okay. Well, I've noticed on the videos I've seen that he's he's not, it's not like the silicon thing where I think he won't own a watch with a silicon balance wheel. He'll own different beat rates. He has a preference, just like we all, like I might have a preference for a certain style of dial, but I get different types of dials too, because it's fun to have a variety, even though I do have a clear favorite. Now, Neff says the Gold Omega is shockingly awesome. Now, I think you probably typed that before I put this one up. So I don't know if you preferred the Sedna Gold or this one, the Moonshine Gold. So now I'll move to this one so you can appreciate that one a little bit more. David, welcome. And thank you for being a 99-cent club member and for participating on several of the panels I've done. Smash the like, smash it. Yes, do it. Do it. Do it. There, that's my Palpatine. It's probably a 6 out of 10. Tuna says, yes, the gold constellation is pretty. David asks about favorite constellations. Orion, Big Dipper. As a kid, I don't know if I really had a favorite. The Dippers were nice because Big Dipper and Little Dipper were pretty easy to identify, and I always struggled being able to identify Orion well, even though his belt was pretty obvious. And I always wanted to see like Cancer, but I could never see it. So that and what was it? The Seven Sisters probably would identify those. I knew more when I was a kid. I don't know as much anymore. I was more Dippers, but I always liked the Little Dipper. The Little Dipper I felt was neglected and needed some appreciation. Neff says, dang, I thought the Connie was smaller. They made one with a blue ceramic bezel that was really sharp. And that one maybe, because again, as I noted, I think like the Manhattan-esque ones, I believe they were 39 back in like the 2018-2020 period. Tina says, 46,600, fine. You see, yeah, we're learning as we get used to seeing these pricing. The skate reel. Welcome to the live stream, by the way. I don't know if you've been here before, but first time I recall seeing you in the chat. It says beautiful watches, though. Yes, I agree. The Constellation is, I should probably look at it more. I end up, when I look in Omega's more dressy catalog, I tend to look in the DeVille's more. But part of that is whether or not you're after, like these are integrated. So are you after that look or are you after the more traditional kind of dress watch look? Scotty says his oldest son's name is Orion. So hopefully Orion can identify Orion's belt better than I can. Neff says Sedna is red. Okay. So we figured it out eventually with the power of reading the article. David said the blue bezel is very 2000s Breitling. Yeah. Okay. I could see that. Let's hop to it real quick. Real slow, because apparently I was like one click away and I went all the way around the circle. Yeah, I see what you're getting at there. Yeah, it does have that very 2000s chronomat style bezel look. I think part of it is these claws that are there. Is reminiscent of the to me the chronomat where you have like at the cardinal directions they have those like raised up little, I don't know what they're called. You can order them because they can fall out of the watches. because I saw someone on Pinside Pinball Forum actually mentioned that they had one, and it lost one of those little things, little tabs. And I looked online, and there are places that make replacement ones, but I didn't know what model of watch they were, so I didn't send them a link because I wasn't sure. I didn't want to have them order the wrong thing, spend $20 and get the wrong part. Koji says, and does hacking seconds put undue stress on the movement? I've never gotten a definitive answer. What an interesting question. It may depend on how they work, maybe is why you don't know, like why no one says. Because I've seen them operate in different ways. I've seen some that seem to basically grab the balance wheel. I've seen others, and I think most, that are basically like a stick just kind of goes in there. And I think once it's stopped and no more wear is happening. But is that initial jolt potentially damaging? Since it doesn't touch the hairspring, I would assume if there is any wear, it's so minute, like you would never know. Like having a watch in the watch winder is going to have more wear on your watch than playing with the hacking every day. But I don't know. I've never really worried about it. So that's an interesting question. I'm not sure. There, you still don't get a definitive answer. Neff says, yellow gold would be my pick here. And Koji says, Palpatine impression, 6 out of 5 out of 10. I can't do that math. I'm too tired. Sorry, Koji. This morning I got up and I thought, am I getting sick? It's so cold. I feel so cold. Apparently the battery died in the thermostat. So I blew it out there and it just says low battery on it. And I was like, no wonder it fell to like in the 50s in the house. And when I went to bed, it was 72. So it was very confusing. Very confusing. But you know what isn't confusing? The next watch set that we're going to talk about. It's more Omegas, guys. There's no Rolex today. It's all Omega, except for Citizen, which we'll get to, and Chopard, which we already got to. But other than that, it's all Omega. So it's pretty much 100% Omega. 60% of the time, it works every time. Is this part of the 60% or is this part of the 40%? You tell me. So these are some more Planet Oceans, basically new dial colors. These are in boutiques. They're only for boutiques. I've always been partial to the Planet Ocean's dial configuration that they've run with, but they're big watches historically, or well, maybe not if you go historically enough, but like the current line has been very, very big. And so I never seriously look at them for me. I just assume they're going to wear way too big. The Seamaster 300 already wears, takes up a pretty good wrist presence as it is. So anyway, they've released 6 new boutique editions. These are all Planet Ocean 600 meter. So super serious dive watches for those of you that need all the meters. It's got the 600 meters. And they've got a gray one, which you can see on the screen. I guess they call it gunmetal. There's a steel green option. There's a beige one. And then I think you've got 6 because you've got those 3 colors in the 3-hand time plus date. And then you've got the chronograph iterations of them. So anyway, see all of that. We'll just cycle through the photos because that is what it is. Actually, what I want to do is see if they've got the pricing here. Because again, I just loaded this up. I did not sit through and these first articles that Blog to Watch does not keep all the information summarized in one box, which is frustrating. But all right, so they are, of course, going to use 3.5 hertz because they're the coaxial movements like we're used to, master chronometer certifications, which you would expect at this point out of Omega. Here we go. They do have the pricing at the end of the article. So $7,100 for the gunmetal and brushed steel. But for some reason, the beige one is $7,500. I don't know why it's $400 more, but apparently it is. And then the chronograph iterations are $9,000, except the beige one, which is $9,700. So here we are, and we'll start cycling through these images. Again, as usual, the basic, like the date here with the 6/9/12 look that they do, I've always, I don't know, it works pretty well for me. So I've always been partial to this. And then you've got like the broad arrow handset. I think it just works really well for these watches. I've never been interested in the chronographs in these dive watches. I've never really been interested in chronographs in dive watches, period. So while I think that they look extremely well balanced, they are of less interest to me than the time plus date. My personal favorites are the beige one, and of course the gray one because I like gray. This is actually different than the gray, my favorite gray that Omega does. My 300M is in my favorite gray. They have Aquaterras like that sunburst style gray that's very, very shimmering, more of a silver really. But this with the sort of the beige loom pips on the dial, you can see it. That gray taupe look. It's the same thing I like about the sterling silver Tudor Black Bay. It's that gray taupe mix. So yes, obviously color scheme that I am susceptible to. I like it with the black date window too. I think it's a good contrast without going color match to do it that way. I always like that better than the white disc date windows in most instances, at least. But that's what we've got. So what do you guys all think about these particular watches? Now, in terms of sizing, I probably should have gone ahead and tried to find that. I know they stayed big because, again, these are just new dials. So let's see if we can find it real quick. I should have been better prepared for that. But again, they need to organize their articles better. All right, 45.5 millimeters in diameter. And this is a 52.3 millimeter lug to lug. I've never had a watch that big on lug to lug. I think about 52 was what my Portuguese was, which I believe was the largest lug to lug watch I ever had. Maybe my Tudor Black Bay Bronze. I think that was like 51.8 or 52 even. And that, I mean, it was right there at the edge for me. My current largest lug to lug is my Moser, and that's like 51. And it's a big watch. I mean, it's big enough as it is. Oh, speaking of big watches, today is the Orient Cano is what I ended up wearing. So with the red dial, this is also a big watch. What is it? 44 millimeter in diameter, but the lug to lug is pretty modest. Compared to these Planet Ocean. I point at the screen, you can't even see what I'm doing. So just one, yes. So very, very, very large, 19 millimeters thickness, by the way, for the chronograph versions, which it's a chronograph, but that's pretty appalling. The time only ones are a little bit different. They're still 43.5 millimeters in diameter, but the lug to lug is only 49.3 millimeters. So that's wearable. Like I'd be able to pull that off. But it's still thick. I mean, I know these are 600 meter dive watches, but they're over 16 millimeters thick for just the time plus date. But 19 millimeter chronographs, I mean, that's like there's like Longines levels of thickness. Absolutely shocking to me. I guess I shouldn't be shocked. The Planet Ocean is getting very long in the tooth. And Omega still, either they haven't solved or they've just tried to kick the can down the road on trying to figure out how they're going to address thickness with the coaxial movements, because they can't get even the hand wind coaxials, like 36 millimeter and above, nothing's under 10 millimeters thick. Nothing. So it's just one of those things. David says they seem so thick. It's the weight of carrying these Planet Oceans around. No, they don't seem thick, David. They are thick. They assuredly are thick. Now that it's a 2,000 foot depth rating watch, I understand. The way Omega's going to do it is the way most brands will. They'll just add thickness to it in order to get that water resistance up. So I do understand that this is going to be thicker than a 300M because it's got twice the depth rating. But it is, but it is thick. It's very thick. Neff says, I know gray is Dennis's choice here. Well, I am, if not predictable. So yes, you obviously were correct. I mentioned that earlier. So Tuna said, I'm no desk diver, but these must be like a paperweight on the wrist. Yeah, obviously I don't, depending on what strap you put them on or a bracelet, I don't normally report weight on watches. These are all straps, so it wouldn't be bad to do that. With bracelets, I don't like to because it depends how many links you have in. The weight can change pretty substantially. Like I have to take a lot of links out of a lot of watches because my wrist is under 7 millimeters. My wrist is under 7 millimeters of diameter. I got little golem wrists. I got wrists about the thickness of this big pin. No, under 7 inches. Oh my gosh. I see. This is what metric does to us Americans. We cannot process this. We have to stick with what we know are US standards. It's what we've got to do. But anyway, Preto, and welcome to live stream, Preto. Almost 20 millimeters thick for the chrono. That's more than 3/4 of an inch. See, he's translated it into a way that normal people understand. That's 3/4 of an inch is almost an inch. That is a very thick watch. Hockey puck. We're talking hockey puck. David's showing some love for the gray Aquaterra. Very, very, very. I like a lot of the Aquaterras. And in retrospect, I kind of wish I got an Aquaterra and not a 300M, but that's true for me with a lot of stuff. It's kind of a, hey, I have this, but the grass is greener on the other side of the bezel sort of thing. The skate reel says, these don't excite, pretty standard Planet Oceans. No, that's fair. Again, it's really just some new dialed color schemes. But you won't be able to buy these on the websites. They're trying to use them to drive traffic to the boutiques. So it is what it is. Neff says, Omega making Longines look thin. Well, I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but I don't know. We get any thicker, it is possible we would see that. Skate Reel says, Omega needs a simple, no frills dive watch. Would be cool to introduce a new line. I don't know that they would ever take the risk. There's a lot of people that wish that's a really, that's probably worth exploring a little bit here, because I think it's a good point. Imagine if you're Omega. So you've got your dive watch line. It's broader than this, right? Because they've got SKUs for days. It's like impossible to follow, but bear with me a little bit. Help out in chat if you're watching live to sort through it. So to me, Omega deals in 3 dive watch spaces. Okay. They've got the Planet Ocean, which is the ridiculously, I'm saying like, now I'm digging myself a grave here because we're going to go like, well, what about the Ploprof? All right. So you got the ridiculous, weird, unique, quirky Ploprof, which is its own thing. So there are 3 main, like what normal people buy. Planet Oceans, which are the big super tech ones. Seamaster 300Ms, which are the more than reasonable hardcore diver watches. The Aquaterras, which are dive watches as far as 150 meters of water resistance is plenty. It's beyond just regular swimming grade 100-meter water resistance watches, but some people might be a little off put by that. You could also throw in as a quasi 3.5 back towards the 300M, the regular Omega 300, the historic one, which this is basically the same thing, but the vintage look. But if you're Omega, imagine like the boat that you're in right now. So thanks to Pierce Brosnan and the big time payout Jean-Claude Biver did with getting Omega on the wrist of James Bond, you can't change the 300M too much because that's the James Bond look now. So they basically boxed themselves in. They used to change how the 300 looked all the time. They changed it over the years from time to time. That's why there's now an Omega 300 and a 300M, which is confusing. That's like Xbox One after the 360 and the Xbox X Series X. No one knows what anyone's talking about. Bad naming convention. So that's a problem. So you've got that. Planet Ocean, you probably could shift around the Planet Oceans a lot, but you've boxed yourself in by saying, well, it's got to be better spec'd for dive than the 300s are. So it's always going to be thick. The Aquaterra could be the platform where you could play around the most, in theory. But the problem for the Aquaterra is that's the dressy dive watch. Like here's the dive watch that James Bond would actually probably wear because it's a little more sophisticated looking than any of the other stuff in the Omega catalog in the dive line. Still would have the functional water resistance to arguably be, a mil spec, but that you could reasonably wear it with a suit and you're not like having a helium escape valve sticking out past your cuff. So you've got all that already. If you were them, why would you add yet another dive line? It's already confusing. So I think that's kind of like they box themselves in the sense that they already have a lot of different dive lines. And some of them, like the 300M in particular, are iconic and they can't mess with it too much. And we see that, I feel, as a case in point with their inability to taper the bracelet on the 300M. And there are some people that like that it's a non-tapering bracelet. I do not. And I'm in the majority. Most people would rather see it taper. Modern era bracelets would taper. That's how most people are going to wear it, would be to benefit from the tapering. But I think the reason they don't do it is they fear it's too much of a deviation of the look of the watch, and that will hurt its sales. And I think, I do not know this, I think the Seamaster 300M outsells the Moon watches. I think they sell more Seamasters than anything else in the catalog, and that's why they're so gun shy about making major changes and further diluting the dive watch lineup. And that may be part of the reason why it seems like they drag their feet on updating the Planet Oceans. They drag their feet on bringing in smaller Ploprofs. All total speculation. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. But anyway, so anyway, interesting question though, Skate Reel. So I wanted to, or interesting line of discussion. I guess you didn't ask a question. You just said it would be nice if they had a new line. But okay, so a dive watch with a more wearable size. Absolutely. I would just like them to shrink some of this stuff. Let's throw it back up on the screen, right? So there's no reason, even if it has to be thick, let's say they can't solve that. Let's say they're not smart enough to solve that. We could have smaller Planet Oceans. We used to have them. We used to have smaller Proplofs too. We could have those. And just like they could make bigger Aquaterras if there was a need. I don't know if there's a need. There's a range of sizing in the Aquaterras. It seems like in the other groupings, they're really uncomfortable. And maybe it's not a comfort thing. Maybe it's as simple as let's just save money by using one case size. Kind of like how I think everyone who thinks knew Rolex was going to get rid of the Oyster Perpetual 39 millimeters when they were abandoning the 39 millimeter case size in the other watch lines. They're all in the Oyster case. Okay. They don't want to make 10 different sizes, one for every millimeter between 30 and 40. They just want to do a few of them. It saves them money. As rich as they are, it saves them money, which means they make more money. So I think that's why they do that. David says they need to pare down the offerings. It's all over the place. That's been a long-running concern. Omega and Seiko have too many SKUs. It's an ongoing problem, but I mean, I think they worry about losing audience with cutting certain things. So I think that's the thought. Tina says most folks don't wear Omega dive watches to actually swim. True. And that's why I think the Aquaterra makes more and more sense for a lot of people. But here's another interesting thing. Go check out their web. We aren't going to do it now. We got one more watch thing to look at anyway. But at some point, if you're interested, it won't take much research. Go to Omega's website, start loading up Aquaterras and start loading up Omega 300Ms. The Aquaterras cost more. Why? On paper, they're the same watch with less water resistance, but they cost more. I don't think it makes sense. I suppose you could try and make a finishing argument. I don't see it. I don't really see it. But I mean, it's just one of those things. So even that, to me, does not make sense. Omega needs a Tudor branch. Well, I think if you were to ask the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, Tudor is Omega's peer, not Rolex. I don't think Omega likes that. And I think that's part of the reason why I feel like Omega has been driving their prices so high lately. But it would be interesting to see. Again, I don't know. They've dug this grave already with having like 200 SKUs in the catalog. Skate Reel says introducing a new line might cannibalize their classic models. Good point. I mean, it might be what they're factoring in. It might not be. And Aravinda, welcome to the live stream. Where to get a Vostok Komardirsky for a fair price? eBay. I don't know if the supply chain issues are different now because of the war with Ukraine and getting exports out of Russia. When I had a Vostok Komardirsky, I got it off of eBay. That was where most of the watch forums recommended. There were a couple of sellers that were recommended. There's not really a good storefront. So there are importers that basically operate on eBay that offer them. And this was years ago. I think it was around $50 for me to get a Komardirsky. They were almost all the same price. About double that if you wanted to get whatever the dive one is. I'm forgetting the name of the Vostoks most people want, but the Komardirskys were around 50. Maybe they're more 60 now. I don't know if inflation's hit them as much as that hit other watches, but that would be where I would suggest you go. Would be there. All right. Skate Reel says, no way they sell more than the Moon watch. Now I may be wrong, and Swatch does not break it down like that in their latest financial reports. I can't tell if they sell more Seamasters or Moon watches, but there's one big advantage that the Seamaster has over the Moon watch. the price is cheaper. So that helps it. That helps the Seamaster move units because the moon watches it's not like how it used to be. They've gotten really up there in pricing. Neff does not like the stickers on the rear Sapphire. He wants those to go away. What the little with the little hippocampus? I think that's what was on this. Why do these arrows have to move? I have to keep moving my mouse to. I should have just scrolled and found it. Well, but we'll try and pop it up so people can look at it. I don't usually look at those, but yeah, you know what that reminds me of? Grand Seiko. Grand Seiko does that a lot. Preacher says, conspiracy theory. Ever since people have been mentioning the Aquaterra costs more than the Seamaster 300M, Omega has been furiously increasing the MSRP for it. Now, you know what? Maybe the conspiracy is true. Perhaps it is. I've not tracked it. We probably go to watch charts and track it. Aravinda asks, do you prefer Pagani design as my first mechanical watch? Do you know about HMT? I do not know about HMT. I'm not a fan of Pagani design, but I'm not a fan of brands that basically just copy the looks of another watch. I would rather go with a watch that has its own unique DNA at an affordable price point. Also, I don't know if David is still here. I believe he did buy a Pagani that was basically the look like the Rolex Daytona, and it did not last very long. So I've heard QC concerns with them, but those are more anecdotal. Like if you're asking me, would I go with a Pagani or would I go with a Vostok? I would go with a Vostok. You get an in-house movement. So there's a pedigree there. There's a whole interesting history to Soviet watchmaking that's kind of encapsulated with that. So that would be an option. They're kind of quirky, though. Vostoks are kind of quirky. Another place I would go would be actually with like what I have on my wrist. I would go with Orient and start looking at some Orient options. In-house caliber. Seiko owns Orient, but Orient gets to do its own thing. Orient has its own movements that they developed before Seiko owned them. Orients have their own design language, and you can find them readily quite affordable. But if you're wanting to stay under 100 euros, you may be forced to avoid even Orient. I'm not, unless you go used. In which case, Vostok's they're very interesting. They're very quirky though, with how the stems wiggle and stuff. But I mean, there's a whole pedigree there. Whereas Pagani they're using off the shelf movements, which is fine. And at that price point, that would be the standard. But to basically clone like Rolexes and stuff, and I've never been interested in that. I'd rather just have a brand that has its own unique look and not try and be something it's not. But that all comes down to taste. They obviously sell quite a few watches, so I'm probably in the minority on that. Tuna says, I don't know about now, but there was a Vostok dealer based in the UK. There are also two different Vostoks, so be aware of that. There's a Vostok Europe. I forget what their code is, and they're more expensive, and they have a different design language. And then there's Russia Vostok, which is since he said Komodirsky, we're talking Russia Vostok. So, David says, I loved my Pagani until I dropped it 2 feet and the bezel shattered. Take a look at Hamilton. Well, I didn't know you broke it. I thought it broke on you. I thought like it gave out, not that you were careless and you chucked it like a child having a tantrum into the concrete and shattered the bezel. Hamilton as well. Again, depends on where you're at with pricing. So if he was listing like 37 euros. So if you're trying to stay under 100, don't know if you can do that with Hamilton. 500, yes. 100, probably not. Look gray though if you're open to various designs. Gray market if you want new. Or try and find something used, which with Hamilton would be quite accessible. I just don't know if you'll get that much. I mean, they don't retain value, but I don't know if they'll fall that much is the thing. Neff says, Orient or Citizen would be my recommendation instead of Pagani. I've never had a Pagani design, but I've heard the quality is not great. Tuna says Orient is a good choice on a budget. Depending where you are, Citizen, and actually that is a great transition, Neff. That is the last one we were going to move into. Historically, Citizen was very much. Now, I know they did a lot of mechanical over the years in Japan. I don't know in Europe, like how much they branched out. Here in the US, it was very quartz driven, just like Seiko was at one point. But Seiko leaned in heavy on mechanical movements for years now. Citizen is starting to get into that. And that's why I wanted to end with these. Now, I think I'm pronouncing it right. I wrote it phonetically to remember. So the Tsuyosa. The Tsuyosa I don't think it actually came out last year, but it came out last year outside of Japan. And so there's been a lot of interest in the Suyosa because it's been very affordable and it's mechanical. So it's different than what a lot of us associate with Citizen. And they have actually turned out a couple of, actually several new versions of this in terms of colorways, but also a small seconds one. And since this article, again, link in the video description, you can check out the article. We're going to go into both. I almost did a video on this. Japanese pronunciation, 6.3 out of 10. Thank you, Koji. I actually got this pronunciation. I think it was from someone who was German who was reviewing the watch. So that's why Suyosa is probably the German interpretation of the Japanese pronunciation reinterpreted by the American who has really bad pronunciations. So that's sort of the chain of events that's happened with this. But so anyway, so 2022 was the worldwide unveiling, and there's been a lot. So it's a little older even than I thought. So they've now got 4 new colors for the regular look. Now, if you remember the older ones, I don't know if this article will have a picture of it. They had a Cyclops crystal at the 3 o'clock, so very Rolex-esque in that regard. But they've done away with that. And I've never been a huge fan of the Cyclops. Cyclops had to grow on me when I got my Explorer to it. I just had to get used to it. I actually love it functionally, but I had to adapt to it. A lot of people hate Cyclops, absolutely hate Cyclops. So doing these without the Cyclopses, I think very, very interesting. So we've got, again, also there's some texturing going on now. It's not just like these really, like I like the original lineup with the because it's sort of like sunburst style dials, and me and sunburst, I love sunburst. But here, you've got like almost this camouflage looking one here. You've got this this brownish sort of one, which vertically brushed salmon. That's what the article called it. Can we zoom in? Yeah, you actually can see the version. Okay, we got close. Maybe not on a phone, but if you're watching on a monitor or a TV, you might be able to make out the vertical brushing here. So salmon dial one, no color match state window. So I don't love it, but I actually like this look a lot more than with the Cyclops on these watches. Part of that is I don't know what magnification they used on the Cyclops. I don't think it's as magnified as the Rolex, and so it looks off to me. It reminds me of a counterfeit Rolex where a lot of times the crystals aren't right, or the Cyclops isn't right, because who cares? It's about tricking people. It's not about, we're talking cheap ones, not super clones. But I do like this dial. I don't really care for the camouflage one myself. That's a little too G.I. Joe for me, but I do think the colorway integrates well. You still have the kind of 4 o'clock crown, which is the sort of Suyosa staple, which I think again is very unique. Reminds me of Seiko turtles without looking like a turtle. So in that regard, very cool. There's okay. Here's one with the Cyclops with the sunburst orange. What is that? All right, so we have. Yes, sorry. So these are the other 2. So the 4 new colors. You got the 2 without the Cyclops, the salmon brushed G.I. Joe. Then you've got orange or tangerine, I don't know what they're calling it, with the Cyclops, sunburst brushed, which is of course something I like. This one, champagne. I like the little gold gilt colored hands, very, very classy. See, the Cyclops looks pretty good in these photos. So you've got those. Now these 2 up here, these are EU models. They're not for Americans. So I don't even know why I'm talking about them. Whereas I think these are more open. I guess they're calling this orange and this oak. But I think champagne is a fair comparison. So these are size-wise, whether they have the crystals or not, they are still the same as they always have been. So these are 40 millimeter diameter watches. They are under 12 millimeters thick. I think it's 11.7 millimeters, 50 meters of water resistance. That will be off-putting to some people that they're not 100. They are automatic mechanical watches. The 8210 caliber movement powers them, and you get the 3-link bracelet design. So display case back as well. And so you've got all of that, and the price is 300 euros. That's how much these are. So April 2024 is when the orange and the oak one are going to be available. The European ones are supposed to be the camouflage and the salmon. Those are supposed to be available this month if they aren't already. So, but those are all 300. Now, what I think is even more interesting, because it gets rid of the date window entirely, so watch nerds rejoice, we've got the Suyosa small second automatic. So same proportions, 40 millimeters, is still the 11.7 thick, all of that. But here you go. You actually get a small seconds at the 6 o'clock position. You give up the date window. Very interesting pattern, guilloche style patterning on the watch movement, or excuse me, on the watch dial. With a different, you've got the concentric circle approach to the small seconds. So you have a difference in texture for that feature to make it stand out more. Not my favorite color scheme that we see here with this look, but overall, I'd say, whereas the other ones look very sporty, and again, all the specifications are the same, this one looks much more elegant, more of a dress watch, a steel dress watch style watch. So in that regard, don't worry if you don't like that particular colorway. There were also more colors available. I guess they are calling this salmon. To me, it's a little too, it's not enough red or pink in it for it to be salmon. But I've seen other brands refer to a more brownish look as salmon. So it just depends. Kind of like champagnes all over the board. But they do have blue and they do have silver. So here's the blue one. Same patterning in all of them. Obviously, just different hand colors and different dial colors. And here is that silver gray, which of course I like silver and I like gray. So I like this one a lot. So anyway, this one's powered by the 8322 movement. Once again, you get the display case back, so you'll be able to look at that if you want to. Some minimal direct decoration. They actually are going to more effort than Tudor does. And in this case, let's see, you can get them on leather. I did not realize that. I just now saw that. So these are 379 euros on the bracelet, or you can save 20 euro and go 359 on the leather strap. So you do have to pay more. You have to pay about 80 more euro if you want to get the small seconds iterations versus the non-small seconds ones. But otherwise, it's spec wise, they're identical. I don't think there are any pictures in the. Oh yeah, there is one here of the leather strap. There, you can take a look at that. So, all right, there you go. So Citizen Suyosa thought that would be one that we could end on for some fun discussions. So let's see. Skate Reel says, wow, that is a beautifully simple small seconds by Citizen. Home run for me. I think it looks very good. Neff says, I have a full Loom Citizen on the side, the one on the side there. Oh, this one, I'm assuming. We'll open it in a tab. You mean this one? What is this? It's one of their dive watches. I'm guessing from huge amounts of water. And the fact, oh, look at the bub. Oh, does it glow like that? That's really cool with the red hands and stuff. Wow. But we're not here to talk about your weird watch, Neff. We're here to talk about we're here to talk about the Suyosa, or however it's supposed to be said. So let's see. The Pre2 says, let me pull it up so you all can read it. Why is the first picture just a picture of the stainless steel case and bezel? I'm not sure. If you mean it's one of the ones off on the side or what. I don't know why they do what they did with the photos. Monochrome doesn't make sense. That's all I can say. David says, my favorite salmon is vertically brushed. Yes. And I know you like to cook a lot. So you probably like to, do you vertically slice your salmon, or do you horizontally slice it so that the vertical brushing stands out in contrast? Ilmari, welcome to the live stream. I think this is the first time I've recognized you typing in the chat, at least. Says, Cyclops is a part of your watch odyssey. Yes. Yes. I'm laughing because Scotty's tie-in there as well. Very Homer. Hey, I was talking about Greek tragedies, I think, on some other thing I was working on earlier today. So that all resonates very, very well. I like it. Good tie-in. So David says, silver gray and small seconds. Dennis, are you going to be okay? You must be sweating. Thankfully, I have multiple watches that are silver or gray, and I have small seconds watches. So, but you see, the price makes these so achievable that, it's been like, I don't have. Do I? I don't have any watches that have a small seconds at the 6 in silver gray and have a 4 o'clock crown. So it's like it would be different. It would be different to the collection. So I'm trying to be good and not far. Actually, I like the blue one a lot too. My least favorite thing about and the salmon, I don't like them calling it salmon, but I like the salmon look. The G.I. Joe is really the only one I don't like. I like the orange also. I used to have an orange dive watch, and I got rid of it. I gave it away, but because I had other dive watches. But I've often thought I should get another orange. It's just, should I go and like save up and get a Doxa? The one I had was like a micro brand watch, so it was a lot more affordable than a Doxa was. You know, I don't know. I just have to decide, I suppose. Neff says, that's it, my work watch. Now, if I were to get this, I would get it on the bracelet. I could, I might buy the strap as well, but I would want it on. I almost always though buy on the bracelet just to be safe. David is trying to, that's being like, do it. And I think David's interpreting the do it as that like one of these will be Neff's work watch, but he meant the dive watch that we looked at is his work watch. The one with the glowiness, the one that comes with bubbles. Look at all these. All right. Martin, thank you for sharing your photos, but they're like all bubbles. Almost all the photos are bubbles. We need more. This is the photo. This is the one. We want non-bubble. We want splash. We don't want bubble. Bubbles always freak me out because it makes me think that the watch is leaking and water's getting into it. So it makes me worried. So Scotty says, place and cart. Yeah. Now I don't know if the small seconds ones are available yet or not. Let's see. What did it say? Worldwide availability, April. All right. So the European salmons and G.I. Joes are either available now or will be available in the next couple of weeks. The rest of these, we got to wait about a month or so. But for under 400 euros, I think it's a pretty decent value from what I can see from what you're getting. And obviously more at like 300 euros if you don't want the small seconds one, you want the one that's a little more sporty. I could see it going both ways, honestly. I really could. I've thought about getting a Tsuyosa before these new ones came out. I don't know. I'd be sorry. Like, this is so different. It's too bad it's why you Europeans always get the nice stuff? I don't know. Anyway, but I could find a way. I could find a way to get it. So anyway, yeah, no, very, very interesting. That's why I wanted to talk about it. I almost did a standalone video on the small seconds one alone. And then there were so many releases and then the complication of the European ones. I thought I'll save it for the live stream and we would talk about it here because I thought it deserved to be discussed. Especially because we talked about so many expensive watches up until now. I like to be able to look at some stuff that's much more obtainable, where you could take a chance and you don't feel so bad about it, or people who are wanting to get into watches and don't want to drop €1,000 on a watch. Let's talk about stuff that's under 500 euro and can be a lot of fun with a lot of robustness. Again, in-house caliber stuff because Miyota, Citizen owns Miyota. So anyway, that sort of stuff. David says, now that's a real champagne, real dial with the bubbles, with real bubbles. And Tuna says, must undercut the Tissot PRX. That maybe, I actually think that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. But these prices, even the small seconds ones, excuse me, because euro and dollar aren't identical. I think it's a little bit higher in US dollar, but we'll be talking like around I don't know. All right, so it's 379 euro. Let's do the conversion. Convert euro to USD. Yeah, let me put the share on. So what was it? 379. All right. So about $410, 408, whatever. All right. So $410. $400 is like the quartz Tissot PRX price. So the mechanically though, it's what you have to double almost. So, or you go up hundreds. So in that, we're looking at Neff's watch again. So in that regard, it's already competitive with, and has been for a while, the quartz PRX. So I think they're trying to move in and fill a void that I feel Seiko is starting to leave by moving so many of their mechanical watches up past the $500 price point. That's my theory. I think Citizen isn't looking at Tissot. I think they're looking at Seiko and saying Seiko's getting way too much market out of mechanical. We need to start pivoting and doing, if not less quartz, which maybe they need to do less quartz because they've got so much competition with smartwatches now at the price points. I mean, they still offer a lot that's cheaper than smartwatches, but you know, you got to lean into enthusiasts with the mechanical thing. And then like these prices that you could start looking at smartwatches at. And so I think they're like, we need to start seizing on some of the collector market, the enthusiast market, and they want mechanical movements. So let's do that. And let's move in at a price point. Okay. Seiko 5s are going in less ish than this, but what is it? The SR PK17, that revival of the first Seiko 5, that retail is more than this. That's like $415 Seiko website, and this is like $410. So my point is, there are Seiko 5s getting into this price point, and this is I'm talking about the one I'm pointing at, the small seconds one on the screen, the more expensive version. Obviously, we go cheaper when we go just the date models without the small seconds. So in that regard, that's what I think they're doing. They're trying to create something that's kind of in that Seiko 5 vein, but maybe feels better in some ways. Now, in some ways, no, right? I mean, obviously, Seiko's got in-house movements as well, because they are. Obviously, I think the Seiko 5s, as a general rule, if not in all instances, are 100 meters of water resistance. So that's the biggest flaw I see in these, is that they only got it to 50, and that will be off-putting to people. I don't mind 50. I would just not swim in it. If it was 50, I would never worry about wearing a watch at 50. But I know there are a lot of people that cannot bring themselves to wear a watch that doesn't say 100. I know people that can't bring themselves to wear a watch that doesn't say 100 and isn't also a screw down crown, which causes problems for Hamilton, which likes to do a lot of non-screw down crowns. So, but anyway, I think they're looking at Seiko and they're trying to take a page out of that and do something different. That at a lower price point than, like, if you start going into this look of a watch, I think you're starting to get outside of the Seiko 5 line, and now they're cheaper. Like when you start going into pro specs and stuff, these Suyosas are coming in cheaper. So that's my guess, but a blind guess. What more could I do? So David loves the PRX as he licks his lips over it. I had one for a while. I would have gotten the 35 millimeter. At this point, it would have fit me better than the big one I had, but I sold mine off. I wasn't wearing it enough. David said, Europeans always get the nice stuff: watches, healthcare, political stability. Well, we won't touch that one quite yet. Preacher says, camo joke. Can't see the dial in the G.I. Joe Suyoso, referring to the earlier comment. Yes. Well, it reminds me a bit of the palm leaf dial from Rolex. Some people love that watch. To me, it was too cute, too creative. But I love plenty of other Oyster Perpetuals, so that was fine. Got to make them for all sorts of people. Neff says, Joma Shop has really good prices on the PRX. Quartz 35 millimeters, like $240. And yeah, I got my Quartz one, not through them. I got them through a dealer, but they had a pretty big discount at the time. I think I saved about 100. That's obviously an even better deal. Skate Reel says, no lie, this blue small seconds looks way more expensive than its price pure class. Yeah, no, you get so far with obviously it's going to be a stamped dial. They're not going to, engine turn or rose lathe turn, I guess is a rose lathe. I don't know this. They're not going to do it like Breguet, right? But patterns add so much sophistication. Sort of like how just like sunbrushed, that sunburst style, because of the texturing, the patterning, even if they can automate it, it looks, it adds a layer to things that just kind of look like generic metal, generic plastic, generic whatever. The blandness, sterility. Sterility can work if you do it certain ways. Like an enamel sterility can convey a degree of finesse that maybe you don't otherwise see. But by and large, like when I look at, say, Breguet, I want the stuff like this. I want the stuff with a pattern. I don't like the look of their enamel dials. To me, they look inferior, like cheaper. But that's a sort of the we all have our own reaction to it. So I agree with Preetu, this sort of, or excuse me, skate reel, that yes, I think this sort of texturing sort of look it's at this price point in particular, it's very attractive. And you can go and you can say I want to get it on the leather strap or get it with the leather strap, and then you've got this maybe we finally have something I can point people to and say, you don't have to get the Orient Bambino. I've whined about that a few times. I like the Orient Bambino. I think it's a very attractive watch, but I feel like when people ask for affordable dress watches, that's the one watch we steer everyone to. And I would rather wear this. And you're near the same price point. Yes, it's a little bit sportier because of the case configuration and the crown. But that being said, the dial is much more interesting, and I think it looks a lot more sophisticated with the guilloche look and the small seconds. Small seconds equal class. They add class. We like that. We like class. Or at least I do. But if you want something more sporty, that's fine too, because as we saw, they got plenty, including the original style ones in these new colors. This is incredible. I really like this one a lot, quite frankly. Very, very. On the older way, if you haven't looked at the Ciosas, go to Citizen's website. They got like a bright yellow one, which I liked before this one came out. Just like they got some very sporty looking ones that I think look very, very good. Sunburst is always a winner for me. So, but when you want to talk sophistication, yes, the guilloche style is a very, very good way to go. Preetu says, quick search of Ciosas are going for $250 to $325 on the gray market. So you want to go with one of the older colorways, and they have a few kind of in this format you see on the screen. Yeah, definitely go and check it out. I always shop around. I usually, the warranties don't tend to mean much to me, especially in this price range. So I'm more than, and most like the big gray market dealers like Joma Shop, they're going to offer you their own warranty. So I wouldn't worry about, I would like look at Citizen site for ideas and then shop around for a better price would be my suggestion. But Aravinda asks, where can I get a balanced staff of a vintage Solville at Titus watch? Oh, I meant to pop that up. Sorry. I have no eBay. It's the only idea I can give you is eBay. You'll have to find, like, you can either get lucky and get new old stock, or you might be able to find a broken watch. The trick is, because in the pandemic, I worked on broken watches, and I would buy other broken watches to get the movements to gut, and some people will part them out. That's the safest option because then they can confirm that the part is good. The problem is with like real vintage stuff, if you buy a broken watch, a lot of times it's the balance staff that's broken, or at least I found it to be, because they drop it. And especially, I don't know if that watch is this old, but if it's old enough not to have shock protection, if the watch is broken, it's usually the balance staff in my experience. And so it's risky, but eBay's really your only option. That's reasonable. Neff said they also came out with the Citizen 0200. Now that's a nice watch. There are my favorite, the Citizen watch. I'll throw it up here real quick. Is one of the ones where they did the paper dial, Citizen. They kind of did like a platinum plating to it, and yeah, here we go. I actually watch for this one a lot. Now, this is expensive for a Citizen, so. But you see this one, they did one in a gold look. This is a titanium watch. It's not platinum. They do like a plate though. So the colorway, like a PVD almost. So the colorway here is like a platinum. They did one that was a gold, but I prefer this look with these flecks of platinum on was like a washi paper dial. This is an eco drive. So it's quartz, and the light gets through this paper dial and charges it. And it's just, I really, really, and this is high accuracy quartz. So it's like plus or minus 5 seconds per year. So very high spec. And you see this little indent here, even though you just see the date, this is actually a perpetual calendar. So it does keep track of you don't have to change it up for months and stuff. It actually is designed to be tracked. But yeah, they like do a special technique, this like powdered platinum that they put into that for that texture of the dial. The bracelet looks really good. Here's a nice close-up of this dial. This is my favorite high-end Citizen. watch. Now they retailed for about, I think, $4,100 US. They're generally trading for around 3,100 or so. If you look around, this was a limited edition run of only 500, but even those, they take a hit because, again, it says Citizen. How many people pay $4,000 for a Citizen? Well, clearly not 500 because they're selling them for less. But this whole line of Citizens have there are other ones which I don't love them as much, but have really cool dials and still generally have that same very interesting movement. Also, they do the whole surface hardening. This is like 1,000 Vickers sort of thing. So it's 5 times harder than stainless steel. So it should be very robust. But anyway, this is a watch from last year, but it was one, a lot of people didn't like it. They didn't like the price, but I understand that, but like, it is a worthy competitor I would rather have that than a quartz Grand Seiko. I might rather have a spring drive Grand Seiko than that, but I used to own one of those. So that's just kind of like the draw that I think it's cooler for quartz, high accuracy and all that. I just think it's cooler. And compared to Grand Seiko, competitive price point, because Citizen high end isn't a thing. They're trying to make it a thing, and that's going to be tough without using a new brand name. But it's still nonetheless a cool dial. Thank you. Yes, Neff. Washi dial. Okay. So Aravinda's watch that he's trying to fix is the Solville et Titus. Yeah, I wish I knew more, but I don't. Oh, Al. Hey, Al. Sorry I missed over this earlier, but thank you for subscribing. I do appreciate it. And there's a subscribe button if you want to click it. For folks that don't know, it works like how YouTube always works. So I always appreciate it. I also appreciate people who liked the video. That helps with the people who watch it, who can't watch it live, which are a few, because obviously in the US, I'm doing this in the morning on a weekend. It's a weird time for people to watch watches. I think, I don't know. Most people, I think, like to watch in the evening, but there are already a lot of live streamers in the evening, and I don't see any reason to, let's be frank, I don't care if I would sap views from them or not. I'm too lazy. I'm tired to do it in the evening, so I don't, is sort of the thing. Pre2 asks, is it just me or do the small second dials look like they belong on a more expensive case? That is that is not just you. At least I do agree. That's the one thing, and I thought I kind of brushed up against it when I was talking about the Bambino comparison. It's because of the sort of integrated link system that they do. You'll see it here on the leather. I don't like that it looks like that, and that's why I would prefer to get it on the bracelet, because you need that aspect of it. That integrated look is inherently sporty. There's a reason why you don't hear about integrated dress watches, because they're not a thing. So yeah, that's sort of the issue to me. Neff says the one issue with that small seconds is that it shows how small the movement is in the giant case. Yes, that is the reason I don't critique that overly so is because the watch is so inexpensive. I don't have any expectation for even a brand as big as Citizen to go to the trouble of honestly sizing a case and getting a movement to the same size. That we're not paying enough to them for that R&D to happen. But one of those things. Koji says he loves that dial. He might mean this watch, but I'm sure he meant this watch. Yes, this watch's dial is incredibly, incredibly attractive. Neff says that watch is cheap when you consider the competition. Sure. And I see there's some of the discussion of the watch Aravinda was talking about. I also see, I think there's a request for me to look at something. I can try here. Let me see if I can see a pic of the HMT Kohinoor. Okay. I think we may have had someone once upon a time ask me to look at some of the HMT watches. I can't recall, though. My mind just doesn't work as well as I wish it did. The website's a little grumpy with me, but I think I've got it. So you said, is that a mechanical? Well, I'm going to assume you've mostly asked about mechanicals today. I'm also a person who subbed you before or a few minutes ago. Well, thank you as well, Aravinda. I appreciate it. I hope I have not been butchering your name too much. Now, Okay, so this is an Indian brand, I'm assuming, because I saw I had a language option to look at it in Hindi. Maybe I've heard about. I heard there was an Indian brand that was gaining a lot of interest. Maybe that's what I have known it from. Let's see. I see 17 results, but then it doesn't show me anything. That's all right. Let's bounce back to Google. The site's just too slow. We'll look at some images. Here we go. Like something like this. Okay, this is all right. Yeah, like a look like this. This kind of gives me a little bit of Aquaterra vibes, but but it's different. They've gone with a different style of, like, I think with the Aquaterras, they do a broader arrow, and I think it's on the hour hand. I'd have to check. A really clean look. I like these kind of cushion case shapes. I used to have an Oyster Perpetual like that, so I've always been partial to it. Don't know if the modern ones are like this. I like the no date. I like a lot of collectors. I love symmetry. So, I mean, I think this is a pretty attractive watch. With obviously this is a very sporty watch, so I wouldn't tend to use it as a dress watch. But in that regard, I think it's a decent looking watch. I like really bright, vibrant colors too. So, especially with sports watches. So, in that regard, I wish I had more examples that I could talk about, but it is but it is what it is. So anyway, so yeah, no, interesting. Probably not a direction I would go in that style. Mostly though, because I own other watches that kind of do that. But if that's that sort of look, and you weren't partial to Seiko Turtles, that might be a good way to go, because those are kind of dive watches, get a little bulkier and stuff. So it's one of those things. But Scotty says they should implement the multi-band 6 in an Eco Drive. I don't know why they haven't. Let's see. Neff says the yellow dial Kohinoor looks really good. Yellow dials, those Bumblebee style watches. I'm a little weak for those. I think I'd still overall prefer orange a little bit, but I've never owned a yellow watch, and I keep thinking I should get one. Aravinda says, I'm in higher secondary now. I wish to proceed with horology in college, but can't find platforms to explore about the colleges. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of options if you're thinking and you also know many aftermarket mods change the original, but authentic ones are nice. Yeah, and then maybe there was a modding community for them as well. It's like there's a big Seiko modding community. And okay, so HMT were or are an Indian brand that is tied with Citizen, and Aravinda confirms that. Yeah, in terms of like, if you mean by exploring horology, like on a budget in college, there are two routes you can go. One is inexpensive mainline brands, and it sounds like that's a direction you've been looking at. So Kohinoor, Vostok. I would say look at Seiko 5, look at Orient. The other option is you can explore micro brands. My recommendation, and some might find it polarizing, would be mainline brands are a better bet. And the reason I say that isn't that the micro brands do a bad job, but if you're like me, when you start getting watches and collecting, you might think you like something and then you fall out of love with it, or you want to get something else, or it didn't work the way you thought. And so if it says Vostok, or even more so, if it says Seiko on it, Citizen on it, Orient on it, you'll have an easier time selling it. You'll take a loss, but you'll have an easier time selling it. Micro brands are harder to move. There's next to no trade value, like no a lot of business, like the Watch You Seeks of the world and the Davis SWs, they don't want regular Seikos and Citizens anyway. But a lot of other people, like on eBay or on Chrono 24, they do. So they just move faster if it's a known thing. Like it took next to no time for me to sell my Tissot PRX because it was a famous watch from a famous brand, sub $400. So people were looking for something affordable that they knew. Whereas when I can't even remember which one it was. I had some no-name brand watch, and I tried to sell it, and no one clicked. Like I never got views. No one cared. No one was looking for that model. And I think I gave it away as a gift. So that might have been Rotary. What? No, that wasn't the Rotary. The Rotary actually is a somewhat known name. But anyway, it's just one of those challenges that people have to work with. Preacher asks, any opinions on the new Zen releases or a separate video in the works? I do not have a separate video in the works at this time. I only read about the Sin watches yesterday. Actually, maybe I saw another YouTube channel might have covered it. I don't recall, but I've struggled to really like Zen. So I like the idea of them, but I'll have to look. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. I was doing a quick search, but I couldn't find enough on it to really cover. And we've gone long. I normally go an hour, and we've gone over. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call it here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the new subscribers. I appreciate it. I hope, always feel free to write in. My email is in the about section of the channel. If you want to ask questions, sometimes I'll answer those via email, or I can do a video on them or make them as part of the live stream. For those that aren't familiar, I do typically live stream at this time. Well, about an hour and a half before the start of this time, and try and do that fairly consistently. And then pre-recorded videos are all over the place. I'll do first reaction videos. That's generally what I do a lot of, because you don't need the watch and you just give some opinions. And that's sort of historically what I did. I do some watch reviews, but I've only ever reviewed watches I own, so those only come out a few times a year. So anyway, it's just a mix of stuff. But anyway, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Again, thanks everyone who liked the video today. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to y'all in about a week. Might have a pre-recorded in between. Just depends what we see come out. Probably not on the Zen. I might go ahead and hold that for the live stream so we can have a conversation. But anyway, until next time, I'll talk to y'all later.